What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Sorry. I hate that I messed up the intro like that. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. This is Hobby Hotline, episode 309. I'm here with Uncle Rich Klein and Chris Carlin. Uncle Rich, I'll start with you. How's your week been going? What you been up to?
My week's fine. I get to look at an assortment of baseball cards this afternoon. One of the people at our synagogue sent me an email, and I spoke to the person. And it's not something I really want to deal with other than trying to help guide him. But he says he's got 3 closets full of cards at his house.
You got to be careful on that, Rich. You open yourself.
Yeah, I've never heard of
it. And I'm thinking, okay.
Yeah, I've never heard a friend or family member ever tell me something like that.
Right. So So I'm going to go over. He doesn't live that far from me. And we're going to spend some time and figure out the best way for him to deal with it, because it may be something I can play with. It may be something for you to say, hey, I want you to go here. So that's my afternoon.
Well, nice. That's a nice thing to do for a friend, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, how about you? How's your week been going?
Good. I was just yesterday. I live in San Diego, but I was up in Burbank at Burbank Sports Cards. So Rob and Ryan Veras have this amazing shop in Burbank, California, and PSA did a drop-off event there. So these drop-off events are so cool. One of the problems about working at PSA is you get to see so many amazing items. It takes you down all these rabbit holes of items, cards and collectibles that you didn't even know existed, right? So just being there yesterday and seeing everyone's submissions, it was really, really cool. Lots of Kobe, which I thought was really cool. Lots of, just great baseball. So, it was a really fun event, very steady, very busy. And Rob is doing some really big things. Now, Rob also owns the Burbank Sports Card Show. And that's going to be coming up in a few weeks after the National and Fanatics Fest in Anaheim, California. And he's really built something special there. It's become the West Coast National without a doubt. It's huge, and it's a lot of fun. And excited to see how this year's version goes in Anaheim. So it's really good.
And I want to point out,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
No, I want to point out Chris is a real gentleman. When he came to the Dallas card show, I had my head down, and I saw Chris, and I muttered as I'm approaching him, I don't know why anybody would want to use his service. And then he's giving me this look, and I give him a wink, and he goes, oh, okay, you were just teasing me. And he was a real gentleman. He took it well. We got great reaction when he posted our photo on Twitter. But he is such a gentleman that he instead of reacting, he waited a second to realize I was putting him on a bit, and I appreciated that. And I also want to give a shout out to Chris. Obviously, it's more than him. But PSA came a year ago to the Dallas Card Show, and I don't think they had a really good experience. They came this year with Chris on the helm, and it was a much better experience for everybody who dropped off at PSA. And I'm a big fan of Chris's. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but like, for example, I never heard, when people would complain about customer service at Topps and Panini, Chris took over Upper Deck, and you never hear anything bad about Upper Deck customer service. He instilled and still there's such a good world there. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of what he did.
No, customer service in this industry kind of stinks, to be quite frank, and it has for a long time. So just instilling in agents who talk to customers the importance of being collector obsessed. It's something we talk a lot about at PSA, that you've got, our customers are so interested and love their collectibles so much. You have to have that same energy and interest in them, and I think it's really important that whoever is talking with customers on the phone or on email, what have you, has that same level of passion, or at least an understanding of why we collect and why it means so much to us to be able to service their needs and help them out. So thanks, Rich. That's really nice.
And to be honest, I was told that at one of our recent executive hires at ComC is somebody who hired you at PSA or was involved in the hiring. And so, I give kudos all around. So, and
they got a really good one at ComC and Dave Steinberger. I'll tell you that. Really excited to see him land there. He's a fantastic gentleman. So excited to see what he does to help build that brand.
Yes, and I mean, I work there. We have a great brand, but obviously it can be improved. And if based on what you're telling me, we can he'll really help take it to the next level.
I think so.
Want to give a quick shout out to everybody leaving comments in the chat. I mean, you guys are always I don't know if rowdy is necessarily the right word, but you guys are always coming in the chat here, which is really great. I do love seeing these comments. Let us know where you guys are watching it from. Like I've said earlier, we got Rex has us on at two screens there at the big at his shop. So shout out to Rex there. We got Mad City Brew always coming in. I know frequent commenter here watching from Madison, Wisconsin. Make sure to like and subscribe. I guess you would like the stream and subscribe to this YouTube channel and then also the Hobby Hotline YouTube channel. First of all, we are coming up on the National here. Let's see. We have a timer recently on not to plug the site, but on Hobby News Daily, I implemented a countdown timer. We are 11 days, 4 hours, 21 minutes, 55 seconds, 54 seconds, 53 seconds. I'm not going to keep going there, but we are getting close to the National.
Good time.
One thing we definitely need to talk about this week as we are getting up to the National was the unfortunate story that happened last weekend at the Dallas Card Show, where it seems that there was a big theft that happened. I saw reports that it was almost $2 million worth of cards. It seemed like they had a lot of footage from what I've seen. I mean, I've seen tons of different people post their different angles. And I mean, even like for whatever reason, they had a camera angle that like followed the guy around. He must have been the only guy, or maybe they zoomed in or something like that. Or the group of people, sorry. Which that's what appears to have happened here. So, couple different things I've seen this past week. We saw, I believe Mascot, a company that was run by some of the previous people who used to work at Collectible. They were trying to build something where you could enter in the PSA certification numbers and it would flag any sales of these things. I think that's really smart. Chris, I'll start with you here. Like, what are your initial thoughts here? Like, what are you kind of thinking? I mean, especially this is a big news kind of going into the National with, I don't know, maybe there's billions of dollars worth of cards like at the National. So what are kind of your initial thoughts when you saw this story?
Initially, I was like, we're going to see more of this. I'm surprised that there hasn't been more of it. I'm very surprised that there hasn't been more of it. If you go to the National and you are walking back to your hotel, you'll see collectors carrying their suitcases, carrying their backpacks at 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, walking by themselves down dark streets in Chicago or Atlantic City. And I'm just thinking to myself, are you guys nuts? Like, are you nuts? Like, you can't carry around those types of assets in some of these cities. Where it's known that there's going to be high-end items. I've seen some really concerning situations happen more on the coin side lately. So PSA is, obviously cards, but our sister company, PCGS, actually started the whole grading revolution. So PCGS does a number of shows, and we've seen a real influx in robberies at these shows. And they're getting more sophisticated in how they target customers and how they plan to get their collectibles. Some so crazy that they will walk the show, find dealers who are out of state, have someone follow them to their cars, watch what car they're in and the license plate number. The next day at the show, while the dealer's in there, they will place a tracker on there. And then they will follow them out of town on the last day of the show and do a smash and grab at the first time that they stop to use the bathroom because they know they're out of state. So it's extremely concerning that this has happened, but I'm shocked there hasn't been more of this. And I really want to encourage everyone. Cleveland's a great city, but there's some sketchy parts to it. This national is a little more spread out than you'll have in Rosemont or Atlantic City. And just be really careful. Keep your head on a swivel, and have a buddy with you. If you're going to be walking around with cards after, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. So, and I'm sure there will be smaller types of thefts at the national or attempts, hopefully. But their security is really good. There's more. Show promoters are doing more to protect customers. I love how much footage there's been from the show. I love how the show promoters have helped in the investigations into this. But it's shocking that there's not more of this happening on the trading card space.
I want to point out that one of the reasons the Dallas Card Show has such good camera security, and they keep it going, was sadly one of my friends got robbed of his fanny pack of $10,000 of cash on him. And there really wasn't security cameras at the time. He wasn't real happy. Fortunately, thankfully, he could absorb that loss. It wasn't it was an aggravating event for him, but not a life-changing event. Some people losing $10,000 like that would be life-changing. For him, it was just aggravating. He'll still go out to dinner. He'll still go out to lunch. He still has this nice home. Other than when we had a storm, his chimney got blown off. But that's a different subject for a different day. But thanks to what happened with his $10,000, that really upped the Dallas Card Show's security cameras. And I mean, they will not, and I know this from experience, they will not let the vendors really start setting up, or they will throw you out until all the cameras are in place. And they're very conscious. And I know they meet the day after every card show. I have not spoken to any of the Dallas Card Show employees or Kyle since then. I bet you it was quite a meeting the day after the show. And I wonder if they're going to now increase, not just during the show hours, but like on Sunday night breakdown. And we're going to keep cops or security here an extra hour or two, just to have more security in the facility during breakdown, which is frankly, along with load-in, the two most dangerous times at a card show.
Yes. Yeah, because there's such confusion about what's going on, who should be here, who's on the floor. Are they part of, this event? Are they part of the last event? Are they part of, security here? So that's the most dangerous times. I agree, Rich. The load in particular and the load out, they obviously target the load in, the more sophisticated thieves, the load in before, because they know that there's more assets there than there is at the end of the show. But at the same time, there's instances that happen every national during the show where, and I think a lot of these are crimes of circumstance where the temptation's too great for people, where the dealers can be distracted. There's a lot of people. It's, you're 5 people deep and people just grab things, so those are more open offenses, I think, than some of these more sophisticated attacks that we're seeing. But losing $10,000 and losing collectibles is a different thing. Having had cards stolen from me before, it feels like a violation. Like, it is such a rough thing to stomach when you've had your prized collectibles taken from you. And I know dealers, although they're there to sell, it stings them just as hard. Like it is. I've been in conversations with this customer from the Dallas Card Show because we wanted to deactivate those certs, mark them as stolen, anything that they had that was a PSA holder, and they're having a tough time with it. I think it's not a good feeling for sure.
Well, there were a couple 52 tops mantles in there, and and to be honest, one other thing, and let's plug PSA or any of the other grading companies here, but Chris is here, so we'll plug PSA, where I think all his graded cards are PSA. For insurance purposes, the cards are graded. And I can tell you, back in my Beckett days, way back in the day, a lot of times the switchboard operators would send insurance companies to me to speak to. And sometimes it was easy. Okay, they're complete sets, they're factory sets. Okay, they have certain values. Oh, they said they have 4,000 cards from the 50s that are all mint. Wait a second. No, there's no way every 50s card is mint. Let's figure out something different on that one. And this is even the 90s. He has graded cards. You can figure out values for those graded cards. They were all fairly traded well enough where the insurance company, they may not want to pay, but it's a lot easier to establish a value. So this is why I always stress there are advantages to having cards graded, and that's one of the advantages. It makes it easier to deal with an insurance company.
Yeah.
So I guess, Chris, I'll ask you this question about, because that's what I was wondering too with the certification numbers. If hypothetically, and I don't know if this is a possibility or whatever, but if they were to, if one of the cards were to pop up on a auction site or like eBay or any of the big auction houses, is there a way to track those certification numbers? Like, do the auction houses, do they have like a list of certification numbers that are like, if this card pops up,
most reputable auction houses are going to run those certain numbers before they do anything. They've just learned because it's a lot of time for them to list items and take in items. If they don't do their due diligence to check that they're not stolen, then they've learned that it's bad business for them. So
right.
I think that the problem is most thieves aren't going to sell them to an auction house. They're going to try to turn them as quickly as they can for, oftentimes not a lot of money. So it's more, you'll see it in a Facebook group rather than, golden auctions or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Is more likely. And luckily our hobby is so it's definitely not as small as it was 10 years ago, but luckily there's so many people that communicate so well, and it's a tight knit group that the word gets out when people start trying to sell these things. So,
I'll ask Rich this question. It's more opinion based, I would say. Do you think that like big card shows like the Dallas Card Show or the National, do you think that people should just avoid bringing some of these like monster big cards to these shows nowadays? Because it's like Chris was saying earlier, like the ability, or not, I guess, I don't know, I don't want to use the word ability, but like the possibility, maybe that's a better word, the possibility that somebody who is a criminal, they're able to come up with a plan and steal these cards. Do you think, like, at some point, do you think we're just not going to see cards over $10,000, $100,000 at these shows anymore, Rich?
I think it might be like the way Heritage brings cards of that value, or if PSA has a display of cards. Heritage has several armed guards at their booth. They can bring the expensive stuff, and I will tell you, those guards are very aggressive, because Heritage left out some free cards once I went through it, and they go to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Hey, these say free cards. I'm just running through them." "Oh, okay." And he apologized to me the next day. He realized I was right, but he was doing his job. But
right. Well, so I'm not necessarily talking about companies. I'm talking about dealers or people, I guess.
Dealers, if you're carrying $2 million worth of cards for you, it's probably worth it, not in addition to having your sons with you, to have a security person with you, or somebody else whose sole job is, who understands security. And there is something to be said for that. I can discuss whether the Nationals should give extra badges to somebody who, hey, this guy's carrying $5 million of cards. I have a table helper who knows cards, but I also want somebody I want somebody extra with me as a security guard, because I don't want that value taken. That's going to be a different subject for a different day. But one thing, and now I'm beginning to understand why the National wants to do is, like, during breakdown, they only want people with badges to be there. And even though some dealers aren't going to be, or some people with badges aren't going to necessarily be honest, at least that's a way of controlling who's still in the building.
Right.
And there is something to be said for having some guidance control. And we'll talk about other things later. But I also wanted to ask Chris, because Chris is actively involved with PSA at the National. And God knows you're going to be shipping a lot of valuable cards back to California.
Yeah.
I don't want you to discuss anything proprietary, but discuss some of the steps you take to make sure they get back there safely.
No, one of the things I love about working at PSA, because I didn't have it up for deck, was our security, and a lot of our security agents are former law enforcement, and that's really important to us to have someone who knows the proper processes to handle an investigation, who knows what to look for in someone who may be about to rob us, but it's also nice to have, if you've got an angry customer yelling at you about a 7, you can be like, hey, look at this. Security is incredibly important for what we do at PSA. And we take a lot of measures to make sure that once someone hands us their cards under camera, that it's pretty much a documented journey throughout our facility. And once it gets to our facility. So a lot of times premium items are couriered directly back to our headquarters to make sure that, nothing happens to them. So,
and you also are grading cards on site, which is a little easier for those, because they're not leaving the building. So
but we get an equal amount of take-home submissions at the National.
I was just pointing out that if it's on house, it's easier.
Yeah, well, it's not so much. There's got to be someone with them 24 hours a day. So you've got people working in shifts. So important that some people know that certain companies are granted the ability to have security. Look at their booth, 24/7. So
that's wonderful to know.
And then you see, it's always so interesting to me trying to rent a safe around the National time. It's there's different companies that handle safe rental, but there are so many safes on the floor of the National. It's hard to get one. So you've really got to be ahead.
Right.
So,
and I mean,
one thing I want to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to share
sorry,
Adam, is it's not just the dealers that need to be careful. It's really the collectors. And something I saw last year was someone in our group didn't have their door fully shut. And there are thieves that operate around the National that push on doors or watch people who went into their room with a suitcase and wait for them to go back to the show the next day and get in. There's a lot of cameras in hotels these days, which is great. You'll see them even on your floor sometimes, but they're not always there. And you just need to keep your head on a swivel during these times. Even having a maid come in to clean, like there's a safe in almost every hotel room these days. Put your frickin' cards in there and make sure it's locked.
See, I never really worried as much about that, because usually nowadays I'm buying from value boxes. And if somebody wants to take my $1 cards, it sucks. But guess what?
You and Jim Beckett.
Yeah, me and Jim Beckett. I don't know who enjoys it more, but yes, the two of us enjoy value boxes. And
I love seeing Jim go through the value boxes. It's my favorite.
It was hilarious.
That's where I ran into him. I ran into him a couple times at the last National. I ran into him at dollar box. I was like, back again. I guess can't get enough of these dollar box. Which that's
his happy place.
The fun. That's the fun of it, Yeah.
And for him, it actually makes sense. He's seen all the vintage. I don't want to say all, but he's seen 98% of the vintage cards. He doesn't always see what's in the value boxes. He sold the company in 2005, and he kind of went quiet for a few years in the hobby, just figuring out what he had. And so there's a whole, and with cards continuing to be released, there's a whole world of cards he never saw. And now he gets to see them going through the value boxes. And I'm having fun because he dropped off 40,000 leftover cards as a donation, and I go through them, and I will tell you, there's stuff I've never seen before in those cards, and or there's this is cool, and but there's also a safety factor, and I know what that's like, and it's hard because a lot of times if you're a vendor at a Dallas card show, you're by yourself, so there's the most danger. Even if your head's on a swivel, unless you can get everything in one load in and out, you're always going to have something. And as you pointed out about the coin dealers being followed, that's happened for years. I mean, when I was growing up and I would read my father's stamps and coin magazines, that was traditional back 30, 40 years ago too. So, I mean, 50 years ago, certain things have never changed. And so being ultra careful is something, thing. And, and I'll point out that last night I actually got pulled over by a friendly Plano Police Department officer. He was following me. Turned out my brake light was out. And I let him for about 5 minutes until I got to a place I knew would be absolutely safe for him, which was the Walmart tire area, the Walmart car area. And I apologized for leading him on. He says, "No, thank you. You did exactly what you should do." And he let me off with a warning. I got it fixed this morning. But that's something that, hey, sometimes weird things like that can happen too. Like, you may not know it, but you might be able to tell somebody if you think something's going on. Don't be afraid to call 911. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's something where it can happen. I was reading about a person who got home from, I think it was a coin show, could have been a card show, and went to talk to his dogs or get his dogs outside for a minute. And while he was in the house for 10 minutes, Russian mob people came and basically smashed and grabbed his car. So, Chris, thank you for that great update on how PSA handles and I'm going to use the word entitled, but empowered might be a better word, to have security at your booth 24/7.
Yeah. And so I have, basically, before we move on to the last topic, I got a question here in the chat. So basically what they were asking, Chris, do you know why PSA decides to delete images? I'm just reading the comment here. I don't know if this is what's going on. So maybe I'm getting some more knowledge here as well. So why PSA deletes the images of the stolen certification numbers? Is that, what's the, I don't know, I guess, what's the mindset behind that? Is that something that I don't really know? I'm just, like I said, I'm reading the comment here. So I don't know if you can speak on that, but that was a question I got on the chat.
Yeah, it is a process thing that we don't want to have more visibility on it, that once it's stolen, we want to use the images to help with investigations or things along those lines, which may be internal. So it's mostly a process thing to assist with ongoing investigations.
Okay. Yep. Makes sense. And then, is there any type of, and this may be, again, a process thing that you may not be able to disclose, is there any type of imaging that's done on like a stolen card that, like, if it comes back, there's somehow a way to, there's somehow a way to catch that it might have been a stolen card? Like, is there any type of technology that you guys are using that maybe is a possibility, or is that something that, hopefully is coming in the future? I guess I don't know if that's
yes, there are. I mean, obviously, if it's serial numbered, what to look for. If it's autographed, the autograph has different consistencies. If it's a patch, patches have different consistencies. But there are a lot of what we've found as we've gotten more involved in image-based recognition, is there are a lot of traits and characteristics to cards that are specific to those cards. So using images that we take during the grading process, we can use actually AI to assist in looking at the specifics of a particular card and the nuances to it. So there's frequently ways that items are cut, is one of the easier ones, but often there's little subtleties to the card. But, just looking at this one that I've got on my desk right now, I've got a patch, I've got a serial number, and I've got an autograph that all, obviously help detect what the card is. So there's a lot of those more present things that you can use, and then of course there's the more subtle nuances of the particular card and nuances that we may find to it, whether it be a crease. Obviously, if it's a PSA 10, it's harder. But if it's one that has defects or things along those lines, it gets a lot easier for us to help and aid in investigations.
Chris, out of curiosity, one thing I've always wanted, and I always wanted that done when I was at Beckett as well, is putting the security number, great job, putting the serial number on the slab. if it's 1 out of 400, or like some of the just say 1 out of 400. You don't do that, but like 122 out of 1,000. And how come the serial number is not on the slab, which indicates I don't know if you've always kept track of what serial number came in, but to me that sounds like a good way of tracking for always the serial, what card came in.
There's a serial number on the slab. What are you talking about, Rich?
Okay, you have one now. You didn't always have it. That's why I'm asking. I can't really see that. Okay, cool.
Right there.
Hey, I'm not I meant the serial number of the card. So yay. Serial number.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
No, each card that's graded has a unique certificate number.
Right, that I understand, but I'm talking about if the card is 1 out of 5, put 1 out of 5 on the slab as well.
Well, it's on the card, but unfortunately, there's not a ton of real estate on these flips. So it does make it more tricky. But there are things that we do internally to help track them once they come through our.
That was my question. You have something.
I don't know about all the other grading companies though.
But I know that I think one of the grading companies, SGC or CGC, puts the serial number on some of their slabs. It was just something that always interested me, because way back in the day, at one point in 2001, yeah, I know this is before you grew your mustache. That way back in the day, there were 3 Albert Pujols in a Bowman Chrome out of 500, all supposedly numbered 5 out of 500, which was his uniform number. And knowing which one would have been real would have been a really good idea. That's all I'm coming from on that. But as long as you're keeping track of the serial number on the card as it gets graded, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's been, I guess we're kind of floating around a bunch of different topics here with, PSA and card shows and stuff like that. So this week wasn't super, news heavy. I think a lot of companies, they end up waiting for the National to really release a lot of their big news. So one thing that Topps did announce this week that they're going to have at the National, they announced that they are doing a Topps exchange program. So there are going to be, for every $100 you have worth of redemptions, you're going to get a Topps exchange box. I don't know if these are the cards that come in the exchange box, but I would imagine potentially. But so if you have $100, you get one box, and their cards are going to range from 50 to, they're saying 7,500 plus. And I think there's a 10 box maximum here. So Rich, I'll ask you this first. Is this, we've seen Panini do redemption exchanges like this in the past at the National. Do you think that, or not? Well, what do you think about this? What are your kind of initial thoughts?
I will tell you that Panini, the lines are out the window, when Panini does it. They'll give you specific times, let's say 2 to 4 Friday afternoon. And those lines, they will deal with who's ever online at that point, but they'll shut it off and say, and I mean, it is an amazing time for the Panini people at that thing. I know a lot of the people who were at Panini. I still know some who were there. And I mean, it's one of the most stressful times for them, but it's also one of their most rewarding times when they were giving it. And good for Topps fanatics for doing something similar. There's nothing wrong with taking ideas from other companies that work. So I'm a big fan of anything. I mean, not everybody can get to the National, but I'm a big fan of anything that gets, instead of sitting with a redemption card, I'm a big fan of anything that gets a valuable card into somebody's hand instead of just waiting for redemption. And I've written about this story when I was doing box reviews for whatever Rich Meller's publication was. And I was doing box reviews. I ended up having a Mike Moustakas redemption from like 2011 when he was getting really popular. And Topps was never able to get that card. And what they sent me as a replacement, and since the box didn't cost me anything, and I wrote a review, it wasn't as upsetting as it would have been to other people. I got sent an Oscar Taveras signed card. All well and good, but Oscar had sadly passed in an auto crash when they sent me the card. And he wasn't going to be a Hall of Famer. He wasn't going to be anything, unfortunately. His future was no longer going to be as good as it was before that horrible crash. Fortunately, I found an Oscar Taveras collector on the old Beckett forums. We made a trade. He was thrilled. I was happy with what I ended up getting, but I had good ways to deal with that. Doing something like this mitigates a lot of that issue. Okay, I didn't get something as good, but I got something good enough. And it makes me feel better as a collector. So
definitely.
I also think the Fanatics 10-year redemption window is really a good thing. It gives you time to get everybody to get their cards in order, because even though Fanatics works with the Players Association, they're working with the leagues. They're not quite as high on the food chain. So this gives them a chance to do something and not have all those things sitting on their books as potential deficits.
Right.
So it's another good move by Fanatics. And sometimes you want to just say, what are you doing? But overall, most of what Fanatics has done, but since they've taken the Topps brand, has been very positive for the hobby. And National Trading Card Days, usually coming up in August, that's a big thing for Fanatics Topps as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, I'll pretty much ask you the same question. What are your thoughts on Topps implementing this at this year's National?
Having worked for a manufacturer for 24 years, redemptions are one of the biggest pain points for the company and for customers. I talked about how terrible the customer experience is in this industry. In many cases, it's tied to issues like redemptions. People will complain about how long it takes to get a card through grading for companies, but that's nothing compared to what you can wait for on a card that you have a redemption for. I myself have a Pedro Pascal Giancarlo Esposito dual autograph with Topps that I really want. And that's the problem is I'm not going to do this. I want that card. I will wait until, for another decade to get that card. That's what I want. That's what that's basically the contract that they made with me is that. And if I can't get that, I want another Pedro Pascal Giancarlo Esposito card. I don't want some other rando box of something, but manufacturers have to do this. It's a bad balance on the books for them. And, when I was at Upper Deck, one of the most painful things that I would see at the National is someone opening up older product, kind of like what Rich was saying with the 10-year window, and pulling an expired redemption for a Michael Jordan autograph or something else unique. So I worked with our legal team to set up an expired redemption program where if you had an expired redemption, we would have a drawing. It had to be a drawing at events like the National. I think Upper Deck still does this, where you can at least get something. You get something in a tiered range that takes the sting out of buying that older box. Maybe you got a better deal on it because it was older, but you pulled this item that's no longer available. But redemptions are a huge nightmare for manufacturers, and I'm glad that Topps is trying something innovative to get those cards off the books for them, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean I think that's kind of the big thing for me here is like, as the quicker we can get because I think one thing that Fanatics has said they've been trying to do is just get rid of redemptions in any of their products in general, which I think for years, which I mean, it could have been a COVID thing. It could have been a multitude of different things. It felt like over the past few years, we had seen like a rise in a lot of redemptions. And, some of the times you can send those things in, and if if it was just bad timing, for example, like the Joe Burrow contenders autographs, those are all live autographs, but they're redemptions in the product. So you can send those in and they'll send it back to you, as soon as they do all the shipping and stuff. But, in some scenarios, they're just not going to get those autographs. So getting the redemptions off of, the books or whatever, however you want to call it, for Fanatics, for Topps, Panini as well. I mean, like because the thing that I'm thinking about is like, if you can get, hypothetically say there's a number to 99 card or something like that, that's a redemption. If you can get 50 redemptions, which that's probably a steep a steep ask there. But if you can go back to the player and say, hey, you only have to sign 50 of these cards, and then they can get the redemptions fulfilled, I think that's also a win. But at the same time, I mean, that is kind of a lofty goal to get almost half the redemptions. But I think from this, for this example, for what Topps and Fanatics are doing, they're trying to, I think, get a lot of the redemptions out of circulation, just so that way it's not something that collectors really have to deal with anymore. Because, like you said, it pains you to see someone open up an old box of Upper Deck at the National or any of these card shows, and then they get to where the auto should be, or they get to the auto and it's a redemption and it's expired. So it's like, it's something that's, and I think what's good for Fanatics, they extended that window, so that way they're, expired redemptions. If you go back to 2014, 2013 ish, I think that's probably where it went back to. You're giving people the opportunity that, like, if these cards exist, they can get them. Also with this exchange, like, if they exchange the redemptions and then eventually get the autos, they potentially can use those autos in, product boxes like this, for example, because I don't know if these are made specifically for this product or like where these autographs come from. So,
well,
Rich,
let me tell you one thing. I don't know. I doubt they made these specifically for this. When you make a product like Top Series 1, let's say, it's very much you as the product manager or, the folks at Topps who are putting it together. You have to put together basically a recipe. You've got a recipe of what it's going to take to make this product. Here's my list of ingredients. And then you need to have a little extra, right? Because you don't know if you're going to run short on this, that, or the other. So when trading card companies make products, there's a series of cards called end of job cards that are, returned to the manufacturer. And basically they can be pretty good hits. Obviously, companies make sure that the most premium, the one of one shield cards and things like that are distributed in the run. But what if one of those gets damaged? So sometimes you need to have extra in case of damage. But then you also have that overrun to use to help out with instances like redemption issues, insert ratio issues, things along those lines that are manufacturer defects, but you have to have an arsenal of items to use to help out with that. So my guess would be that many of these items are end of job from different products.
Yeah, so that actually was literally going to be the question that I was just about to ask Rich and then you as well. So that actually, I don't have to ask the question. I was going to say, like, where did you think these cards come from?
It drives collectors nuts, right? Because in our minds, everything should go in the pack, right?
Yeah, right.
But when it's a release so large and you have to cover yourself as well as a manufacturer for instances of factory damage or issues where the machines may not be firing right and someone gets a box with no autographs. I've had that happen. Everyone who's been in this hobby for a while has opened up a box that didn't have what it was supposed to have, or maybe had more than it was supposed to have. So it's unless it's a product like Exquisite or the Cup where it's being hand packed, there's always going to be instances where there will be issues with product potentially because it's a mechanized process.
The funniest thing is I did reviews for 7 years, and in those years I probably did hundreds of boxes. Only twice did I not get what the box promised me. Yeah. And both times it was Topps Chrome Football.
No, and I got to tell you, it's amazing that manufacturers can get it right so frequently because, and we'll complain that, the autograph's always on the third pack and the bottom, the left. But it's like, come on, man, like they have to have a sequence to deliver what they promise. So, it is. I'm always shocked that more things don't go wrong in the manufacturing process.
We've talked in the past about some of Topps production things, and one of the things is they're still on a learning curve with the printing presses because when they bought the printing presses here, I think a lot of the senior people who aren't there anymore. So you have a big learning curve, and that's true of any position. I saw one of my friends at the Dallas Card Show who's like high up on the Panini product management chain. And I worked with him at Beckett for years. He had done a lot of stuff at Panini. And then he circled back to Panini after a lot of the people left for Fanatics. And he says, I'm still learning a couple years later. And there's a lot there. And and he's a collector. He goes to the shows, he gets it. And that's the thing, as Chris points out, you want, as Jim Beckett would say, as friction free as possible, as easy as possible. But they're still human beings doing things, and things still go wrong. And redemptions, I don't want to say it's something gone wrong, but it's something where we didn't get the cards in time. And sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it was Panini waited 7 years for some wide receiver to return their signed cards. People were getting them like 6-7 years later after the fact.
Huh.
Hey, I want to talk to Rex's point here. It's not. He's saying that basically it's hard for card makers to go out and bug the athletes. The real issue is the agents. The manufacturers deal with the agents and bug them over and over again. And when I can speak from seeing this happen dozens of times, when you really get hard on the agents and say, we're not going to do any more autograph deals for this player, what have you, the agent will let you know, okay, that's fine. By the way, I represent all these other athletes.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a problem with this one, you don't get access to all these other athletes, or I'm going to charge you more for all these other athletes. So agents are really good at making sure that their clients are always represented and taken care of, unfortunately. So it's a tricky thing.
Chris, do you think, and Adam, do you think that the fact that Fanatics has closer ties now with the Players Association and the leagues will make it easier for them in the future to get the autographs?
No.
Okay.
You want to know why? Because they want
the issue what you just brought up.
They want more and more autographs. They want, and the athletes only have so much time. You should see what an athlete has to sign their rookie season. It's insane. And most of these players are just trying to make the flipping team, right? So it's really, really hard on them when they have to sign, honestly, 50,000 autographs for a manufacturer. I love how Topps will have athletes show, during their signing, but you can see how much they are signing. It's a lot. And for someone who is just breaking into the league and has all these new commitments and things like that, their rookie season, we would always say at Upper Deck that, how well an athlete does signing their rookie season determines how much we're going to work with them in the future. If they can't get through this, then they're going to be a problem signer in the future. We don't want to have more redemptions. So we're probably going to offer them a smaller contract or no contract at all. But it's a lot, and people, as much as companies have done a good job with new, one thing I like that Fanatics did is these first stitch cards. It's the jersey is something you never even wore, but it's a card that was the first one off the line, so to speak, and they put those in cards. But nothing has galvanized or interest collectors like an autograph. And there's always going to be that reliance on them. There's more people. Panini wants to 10x the hobby. That's 10x autographs. And it's so hard to do. Really, really hard to
Chris, out of curiosity, and Upper Deck has been pretty good over the years with this, and I know you're not there anymore, but I think there's also a bit of an untapped market, especially if the collectors get a little bit older and Topps does a good job with heritage, and I think they could even do a better job. And I'm sort of conflating things here, but we'll call it the retired players. I know they're not the active players, but the retired people who might, like especially in baseball, the guys who retired before 1979, any extra money they can get from signing autographs, they're not getting the pension. So they may just be living on Social Security. So they would be getting extra money that they could really use. And getting players that are popular or well known even in one area, and I'm just going to use Carmen Fanzone, who was known in Chicago because he became a professional musician. Getting somebody like that to sign cards, as long as he's physically able to, would widen the autograph world. And I mean, I know there's only certain products you can use somebody like that in, usually Heritage and maybe Archives. But is that a way of getting more autographs out there and helping people who might not be doing as well financially as the active players who are still taking in a lot of money?
Yeah, the problem, Rich, is this hobby is so driven by rookies.
Mm.
It's a
Yep.
rookie-driven hobby, and uh, the veterans, in most cases, are asking more than a rookie would to sign their autograph. Rookie deals can be as inexpensive as $1 a sig, whereas veterans, it's going to be 15, 20, 25 on up based on who they are. So for manufacturers to be able to deliver the ingredients, which are these certain number of hits, they have to be able to use those rookie contracts to be able to offset the overall price of the product. So
But but that's why I'm thinking of retired people who could use the financial help.
they
You know,
still have
and,
agents. They still have, I was with Rick Sutcliffe, a former pitcher for the Cubs last night, and his agent just passed away, sadly, but still he has an agent, and his agent's working on his behalf. And Rick is a guy who doesn't sign a ton. Actually, I'm trying to get him into the hobby a bit more, but it's one of those things where for some players that are retired, they don't like that side of the business. He doesn't do public signings because he's just off put by someone wanting to make money off him or his name, image, and likeness and his signature. So everyone's a little different that way, but they still have agents, and the agents still work on their behalf to make sure that they maximize it. So yes, there could be a few guys like that, Rich, who are definitely worthy. And one thing that I loved that Upper Deck would often do is try to find athletes who haven't signed for a while. Try to find those guys who were deeper on the bench but were fan favorites, and try to do deals with those guys. And because it's important that when you open a product every year, you're not seeing those same veterans. You're seeing a little, oh, I remember that guy. I haven't seen that guy. That guy hasn't signed for a number of years, That's a big deal. That's a big value add for manufacturers for those projects that do require more veteran or legendary representation.
when I was growing up, when dinosaurs walked the earth, we had people like Nick Patil on the Rangers, who was the enforcer, the thug, or whatever term you want to use, the guy who would drop his things and, drop his gloves. But we also had good players on the Rangers like Walt Tkachuk and Jim the Chief Nielsen and Rod Sealing and Steady Eddie Jacquemin and Jules Villemure, and all these guys were retired, and they were big fan favorites Eddie Jacquemin was more than just a slight fan favorite. He was a big one. I'm just reciting some people: Phil Nevin, Ralph Backstrom. These were people I grew up with, and that would have been really cool to have them in. As you said, they probably hadn't signed for a long time, and it's just something where, that, as you pointed out, if you can get more of those guys into the sets, that is a win for, we'll call it old farts like me. But it's also a win for them. They may not be, they may be getting the pension from the teams or the leagues or the Players Association, but they may not be getting as much, obviously, as the active players. So that's why I'm saying it's a win-win. Yeah, Rick Sutcliffe became an ESPN announcer for a while, so he's got, he still has an agent because he still does things like that. Yeah. Other people may be more accessible. And obviously everybody.
No, there were absolutely athletes who we did work with that, was a one-man shop, it was them. But most do still have some type of representation for sure.
And good for them to have some representation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like,
good for them.
I have a close family friend, an old pitcher named Randy Jones, who was with the Padres, and he's just a really good guy. But I asked him, Randy, do you ever get tired of signing? And he says, Chris, the problem isn't when people ask for my signature; it's when they stop asking for my signature. And that's one of those things that a lot of these guys are cognizant of.
Randy was a great Facebook follower for a long time, by the way. I really enjoyed his posts.
Yeah, he'll chime in on some of my stuff on Twitter every once in a while. I'm like, RJ, what are you doing?
And he won a Cy Young Award. He's a great example of somebody who appreciates that people want, people want him. I remember, and I'm digressing, but the late Frankie Frisch was at the Hall of Fame like in 1971, and some fan asked for his autograph and said, "Who did you used to be?"
Yeah. Who were you is the
Who were
most
you?
offensive thing I've heard people say.
Yeah. And he was taken aback by that. But he was still Frankie Frisch. He was still the Fordham Flash. He was still an all-time great player.
Yeah, absolutely. That's hilarious.
Okay. Well, we're approaching.
Yeah.
We've had a really good hour.
We're kind of
so thank you for leading us
coming up on the top of the hour here.
Go? Holy crap!
I know, right?
Know, Chris. We got through this real quickly.
Yeah.
And I do like Rich. I love your idea about the having older players sign cards, and I think it's a great idea. But I think unfortunately, like with this business now, unfortunately, it's become very money driven. I mean, I don't know, maybe from your perspective, maybe it could always have been like that, but like a lot of the autographs in some cases are just like it's just a line on a spreadsheet. It's just we got to check that off to make sure we get this and this product. So like I said, I do like that idea of getting older players to sign to sign for any number of different reasons. But like we said, unfortunately, we are coming up on the top of the hour here, so I'm just gonna go around the horn one more time, basically. Chris, for you, what you got coming up? I mean, you're probably busy with the National. Anything you want to promote? Anything you want to say to the Hobby Hotline listeners here as we sort of wrap things up?
I'm responding to Dykstra right now about why are manufacturers scared to release print runs, because it doesn't value out to them. It doesn't. If it's not a one of one, collectors don't really care that much. But what they do care about is when there's too much. So if manufacturers were to share, there's 5,000 of these jersey cards for a particular player. What? For a collector? Oh, I don't want to touch that, So they don't share it because it doesn't behoove them to share it. But things coming up. Yes, the National is going to be great next week. So excited to see so many fans. I know there's a lot of people who some even on this chat who don't understand what PSA does or don't think that the services we provide are valuable, but I can tell you they are, and I would love to chat with any of you. I'm going to be there on site because when I came here, I didn't fully understand everything either. I came from the manufacturing side, and I would not be at this company unless I believed fervently in what they do. And over the last couple of years, I've been slabbing everything I've got, whether it's flipping Toto ticket to banknotes, to really cool coins. There's a real value to some of the things that grading services provide. But there's an intimidation factor of walking up to that booth and talking to someone. So I just want to say that if you see me at the show, please come talk to me. I love the hobby. I love this industry. I love working with collectors. And if I can give you some tips or tactics or help you along your collecting journey, I would love to do that.
And Chris, to be honest, last year at the Dallas Card Show, I heard a couple complaints about how hard it was for people to figure out how to submit cards at PSA. And this year I heard none of that. So, I know it's not just you, but you're a spearhead in that. So
there's some amazing things that PSA has been doing to make it easier for customers. And, I know people don't need another app on their phone, but the PSA app is really, if I've got to pimp one thing, it's this app, because you can keep track of what's going on with your orders. But some of my favorite things are being able to do a grade reveal where you can see, you've got the back of your item and then you can flip it and it tells you, oh, you got a PSA 8, So but one of the coolest things that it does that I was using a lot yesterday at Burbank Sports Cards was filling out a submission form by taking pictures of the cards. And we talked about that image-based recognition, Adam. It's something that we've invested a ton in, where now you used to have to be like, I think this is a 2015, but maybe it's a 2014, or on Pokemon cards. Holy crap, there's so many different LLs or things like that. I'm like, I know it's a Charizard, man, but I don't know where it came from. To take a photo and it says, oh, this is 2015 Pokemon EX, whatever it is. Yeah, I love seeing the lights go on in people's eyes when that happens. And on Wednesday at the National, from 6 to 8 at the PSA booth, I'm hosting an event called Submission 101, where we're taking people into our booth, and we've got a private little breaking area. But that for that day on Wednesday from 6 to 8, free for anyone who wants to come. Really encourage you to do so. I'll be walking people through some of the things on the app and how to fill out a submission form. So
perfect.
excited.
Yeah, love that.
Chris, that's really
Rich. I'll
really...
Rich, I'll kind of ask you the same question. What you got coming up, or you probably got the national stuff like that. Just let the fans know what you got going on, or anything you want to promote.
As I said, I got this collection to look at. Unfortunately, my financial situation doesn't quite enable me to go to the national this year, and that's okay. Things came up where they were beyond my control, and it's okay. I'll save for Chicago next year. I should be in better shape. Chicago's also a little more accessible to get to.
Right.
And we'll go from there. But as I said, there's a lot of local things. There's like 6 local shows in the next 2 months, including the big Dallas Card Show. So I get to see a mini national every 2 months. And then there's Kyle's and his Dallas Card Show team's Investabilia, which has a small card section, but it's good enough. And there's a lot of fun stuff at that show. So I get to see plenty of stuff without having to drive very far. And that's very cool. And, and it's always great to, spend time with Chris like this. And I hope he comes to the Dallas Card Show, or his team comes to the Dallas Card Show more often. We love to see you.
Yeah, I thought it was a great show.
And you mentioned how you should be there more often, and how, I want to put a plug in how not just you, but more people other than Beckett, because it's a hometown advantage.
I am shocked that there's not manufacturers at that event at least once a year. That's what we think might be our right cadence, is once or twice a year for that particular show. But why aren't manufacturers there? Like it's in many of their backyards. So
I know that
a manufacturer presence there. I think that'd be awesome.
A couple of shows ago, Topps had a quarterly meeting, and 70 people, give or take, who worked for Topps quietly attended the show on a Thursday night. I ran into a couple I knew, and they said, "Yeah, we have a group of 70 at this show." And Panini, it's even more shocking because it's a 1-hour drive. It's a 30-minute drive. It's like you should be there every show. I mean, that's not even hard. Even if it's just a small presence. Yes, Panini, it's a drive. You're not even having to pay hotels for these people.
Right.
If you're not having to pay a hotel and they can drive home at night, why aren't you there? I agree with Chris 100%. I find myself doing that. I find myself doing that a lot. So, but that's what's going on. I'm going to have fun trying to look at these 3 rooms of stuff in a couple of hours. I thank the chat for such a great thing. And Chris, I'm amazed how you're able to multitask and join the conversation. I could never do that the way you did. So kudos to you on joining.
I'm only able to answer every 19th question, but yeah.
So I'll, as we're kind of wrapping things up here, I want to thank you, Rich. Thank you, Chris. Thank you everybody in the chat, everybody in the YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. Make sure you like and subscribe.
Hey, Adam,
go for it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, Chris, thank you.
And Adam, I always enjoy when you're the host. You plan it out in advance. You do a wonderful job.
Appreciate that. Yeah. The only thing I have to promote here is going to be this show, and then Hobby News Daily, the daily podcast. I work with Danny 5 days a week on that, and then Saturdays we do the recap. It's on YouTube. It's all that stuff. So, I really enjoy that. If you want to hear me talk more, then, that's where you can find me. Heroes for Sale, I guess, on Twitter, if you want to go there. I kind of tweet out random stuff, sometimes just my random interest, not as much about sports cards, sometimes if things pop up. But yeah, like I said, subscribe on YouTube, come back here to Bench Clear Media next week, because that is where this show is hosted. Thank you all for listening and watching, and make sure to like and subscribe, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone.